and how is your preparation going on for your board examination. There are so many videos on YouTube I have seen where means at one shot and in rapid revision all the chapters are discussed, but through the notebooks I don't think so anyone has prepared like this. So you can watch this video till end and you would be revising your all the things, means how you need to write in your board examination for getting means above 90 marks. So this is contemporary world politics and politics since independence in India we have discussed already, so you can see that also. Now let's discuss about the contemporary world politics. In this video, we will be discussing about the end of bipolarity, contemporary centers of power, contemporary South Asia, international organization, security in the contemporary world, environment and natural resources and globalization. Starting from this chapter, the end of बायोपोलैरिटी. जब रशियन रेवोल्यूशन हुआ था तो यूएसएसआर जो है वो टूट गया था और 15 जो कंट्रीज़ है वो बनी थी. तो ये पहले जो है 15 कंट्रीज़ यूनाइट हुई थी. सो द सोशलिस्ट रेवोल्यूशन इन रशिया इन 1917 gave birth to USSR with the inspiration of socialism based on these to ensure a minimum standard of living for all its citizens, and the government subsidized basic necessities, productive assets were owned and controlled by the state. ये सोशलिस्ट रेवोल्यूशन हुआ था 1917 में, जिससे यूएसएसआर का बर्थ हुआ था विद द इंस्पिरेशन ऑफ सोशलिज्म बेस्ड ऑन दिस टू इंश्योर अ मिनिमम स्टैंडर्ड ऑफ लिविंग फॉर ऑल इट्स सिटीजन्स. द गवर्नमेंट subsidized basic necessities also, and productive assets were owned and controlled by the state. Russia was the only republic among 15 republics who dominates everything, and people from other regions felt neglected and often suppressed. This was the issue. Soviet Union lagged behind the West in technology, in infrastructure, and could not fulfill political aspirations of the people. So the Soviet system, however, became very bureaucratic and authoritarian, making life very difficult for its citizens. Now, lack of democracy and the absence of freedom of speech stifled people when often expressed their dissent in jokes and cartoons. Most of the institutions of the Soviet state needed reforms. The one party system, represented by the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, had tight control over all institutions and was unaccountable to the people. Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. इन्होंने जो है रिसोर्सेज के चलते फिजूल में ही अफगानिस्तान पे जब अटैक करा इन 1979 ऑल्सो वीकेंड द सिस्टम ऑफ फर्दर मोर. ठीक है, तो इससे भी जो ये यूएसएसआर था ये मतलब खुद ही वीक हो गया. फिर एक उम्मीद थी मिखेल गोर्बाचेव से. Mikhail Gorbachev, General Secretary of Communist Party of Soviet Union in 1985, initiated the policies of economic and political reforms to democratize the system, which were opposed by the leaders within the Communist Party and contradictory view of the people. Now, reforms were necessary to keep the USSR abreast of the information and technological revolutions taking place in the West. Okay. However, Gorbachev's decision to normalize relations with the West and democratize and reform the Soviet Union had some other effects that neither he nor anyone else intended or anticipated. The people in the East European countries, which were part of the Soviet bloc, started to protest against their own governments and Soviet control. The people of Republic had been fed up with the old-style rule of Soviet bloc, and in December 1991, under the leadership of Boris Yeltsin, an elected leader, Russia, Ukraine, and Baltics declared themselves independent. ठीक है? The formation of Commonwealth of Independent State (CIS) came as a surprise, and the exclusion of these states was resolved by making them founder members of the CIS. Russia was accepted as successor state of Soviet Union by inheriting a Soviet seat in UN Security Council, who accepted and commitments of Soviet Union and carried out some nuclear disarmament measures with the US. Now, Soviet Union had been disintegrated on the grounds to maintain nuclear and military arsenals. Awareness of people of their backwardness, then Western capitalism, as well as alienation of ordinary people who were exempted from any kind of privileges, the rise of nationalism and the desire for sovereignty within republics like Russia, the Baltic republics, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, and Ukraine, Georgia, and others proved to be the most immediate cause for disintegration of USSR. Disintegration of USSR resulted into the end of Cold War confrontations, created dominated capitalist system, emerged many new states, and the advantage was taken by Central Asian countries of their geographical locations by maintaining relations with Russia, the West, the US, China, and the others. उसके बाद द प्रोसेस ऑफ ट्रांजिशन फ्रॉम एन अथॉरिटेरियन सोशलिस्ट सिस्टम टू डेमोक्रेटिक कैपिटलिस्ट सिस्टम इन रशिया, सेंट्रल एशिया एंड ईस्ट यूरोप वॉज इन्फ्लुएंस्ड बाय द वर्ल्ड बैंक एंड IMF केम टू बी नोन एज शॉक थेरेपी. शॉक थेरेपी इसका मतलब क्या है? यूएसएसआर जब टूट गया था तो यहाँ पे जो रशिया था, अब रशिया ने जो है IMF, वर्ल्ड बैंक, इन सब से जब हेल्प मांगी तो उन्होंने कहा कि जो भी तुम्हारी जो भी मतलब पब्लिक की ये जो कंपनीज हैं उनको अब बेचना स्टार्ट कर दो, और उनकी जो रशियन करेंसी थी उसकी भी वैल्यू बहुत ज़्यादा गिर गई थी. सो शॉक थेरेपी इन्वॉल्व प्राइवेटाइजेशन ऑफ प्रॉपर्टी, प्राइवेट फर्म्स इमर्जेंस, कंप्लीट स्विच ओवर टू फ्री ट्रेड एंड फॉरेन डायरेक्ट इन्वेस्टमेंट, फिनेंशियल ओपनिंग अप, करेंसी कन्वर्टेबिलिटी, breakup of existing trade alliances among the countries of Soviet bloc to maintain relations directly with the West. अब इसके क्या रिजल्ट निकले, क्या कॉन्सिक्वेंसेज हुए? सो द लार्जेस्ट गैराज सेल इन हिस्ट्री, डिक्लाइंड वैल्यू ऑफ रशियन करेंसी, रूबल ड्यू टू इन्फ्लेशन, क्योंकि बहुत ज़्यादा क्या हो रही थी, महंगाई बढ़ रही थी. फूड वॉज इम्पोर्टेड, डिस्ट्रॉयड ओल्ड सोशल वेलफेयर सिस्टम, migration of educated and intellectual manpower, and disparities due to privatization between the rich and the poor in the regions of Russia. The constitution of newly democratic institutions was drafted. वो draft किया गया था in a hurry, where strong executives appointed themselves as a president due to weak parliament and lack of independent judiciary as in Russia, Turkmenistan, and Uzbekistan. Now revival of Russia in 2000. So due to export of natural resources like oil, natural gas, and minerals which were available in abundance, Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, Russia, Turkmenistan, and Uzbekistan, and from where these pipelines crossed were paid on the rent. Most of the former Soviet republics had civil wars and insurgencies as in Russia. Two republics, एक तो Chechnya and Dagestan, had violent secessionist movements in Central Asia. Civil war took place in Azerbaijan and Georgia. Czechoslovakia was also split into two. Even countries and provinces like Ukraine, Kyrgyzstan, and Georgia are fighting over the river water, leading to instability and making life difficult for ordinary people. The Central Asian Republic were rich in hydrocarbon resources for economic benefits, as oil companies and outside powers had a competition to exploit these natural resources. Also, the US approached them to hire bases and territories during wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. Russia and India share a vision of multipolar world order, collective security, and greater regionalism, negotiated settlements of international conflicts. On independent foreign policy decision making through the United Nations UN. India is benefited from the Russia on issues of एक तो कश्मीर यहाँ पे, और एक शेयरिंग इंफॉर्मेशन ऑन इंटरनेशनल टेरिटरिज्म, और कश्मीर वाले में एनर्जी सप्लाईज, एक्सेस टू सेंट्रल एशिया, एंड बैलेंसिंग इट्स रिलेशंस विद द चाइना. In return, Russia has also been benefited from India on the ground of second largest arms market for Russia. उसके बाद नेक्स्ट जो है यूएस हेजमनी इन वर्ल्ड पॉलिटिक्स. जब यहाँ पे यूएसएसआर जब टूट गया तो इकलौती बस यूएस थी जिसकी हेजमनी जो है पूरे वर्ल्ड पॉलिटिक्स में जो है कि हो गया कि आइडियोलॉजी जो है इनकी कैपिटलिज्म ठीक है. अमेरिका रेफर्स टू द यूनाइटेड स्टेट्स ऑफ अमेरिका. इट कवर्स टू कॉन्टिनेंट्स, द नॉर्थ एंड द साउथ अमेरिका, एंड द यूएस इज ओनली वन ऑफ द कंट्रीज ऑफ द कॉन्टिनेंट विच इज अ सिंबल ऑफ यूएस हेजमनी. After the disintegration of USSR in 1991, the first instance of US hegemony came into observation. Through some aspects of US hegemony did not emerge in 1991 but in fact go back to the end of the Second World War in 1945. US did not start behaving like a hegemonic power right from 1991. It became clear much later that the world was in fact living in a period of hegemony. Let us therefore look at this process by which US hegemony got established more closely. Operation Desert Storm by the UN during First Gulf War to retreat Iraqi forces from the Kuwait. उसके बाद जो नेक्स्ट है वो ये है द फर्स्ट गल्फ वॉर रिवील्ड द वेस्ट टेक्नोलॉजिकल गैप that had opened up between the US military capability and that of other states. William Jefferson Bill Clinton, the newly elected president of the US in 1992 and again in 1996, during the Clinton years, it often seemed that the US had withdrawn into its internal affairs and was not fully engaged in world politics. In foreign policy, the Clinton government tended to focus on soft issues like democracy promotion and climate change. World trade rather than of military power and security, the above mentioned policies of the US were contradicted in response to Yugoslavia action against predominant Albanian population in Kosovo by targeting bombards through the Operation Infinite against AI Quadia. In response to the bombings of US embassies in Nairobi, Kenya, Dar es Salaam, and Tanzania in 1998, on 11 September 2001, 19 hijackers hailing from a number of Arab countries took control of 4 commercial aircrafts shortly after takeoff and crashed into World Trade Center in New York, Pentagon building in Arlington, Virginia, US Defense Department, and the Capitol building of the US Congress in Pennsylvania came to be known as event of 9/11 in the US. In response to 9/11, George W. Bush won the elections in the US, succeeding Bill Clinton. The US launched Operation Enduring Freedom against all those suspected behind attack in 9/11, mainly Al Qaeda and Taliban regime. The US forces made arrests all over the world, transported and detained the persons in secret prisons like Guantanamo Bay, a U.S. Navy base in Cuba, where the prisoners did not enjoy the protection of international law or the law of their own country or that of the US. Even the UN representatives were not allowed to meet these persons. On 19 March 2003, the US launched Operation Iraqi Freedom to prevent Iraq from developing weapons of mass destruction, that is WMD, weapons of mass destruction, in the ostensible purpose to control oil fields and installing a regime in Iraq friendly to US. World political power is in the form of military domination, economic power, political clout, and cultural superiority. The international system dominated by a sole superpower or hyperpower is called a unipolar system. Hegemony is an international system with only one center of power to be gained and retained in the form of military domination, economic political chart, and center superiority, which was enjoyed only by the US after disintegration of Soviet Union. Hegemony is an international system with only one center of power to be gained, retained in the form of military domination, economic political chart, and central superiority, which was enjoyed only by the US after disintegration of Soviet Union. Hegemony as a hard power is based on the military capabilities of a country, and the US has proved it. The US today spends more on its military than the next 12 powers. Even technologically, no other power can match with the US. Hegemony as structural power must sustain global structure in economic sense, and the US has provided global public goods as sea lanes of communication, that is SLOCs. sea lanes of communication, as well as accounts for 15% of world trade if European Union is included and 20% in world economy. The US has contributed basic economic structure in the form of Bretton Woods system and degrees in MBA. Has many as soft power implied class ascendancy in social, political, and ideological spheres, which is more effective than the coercion to move hand in hand, and the US was proved ultimately triumphant in this. The first business school in the world, the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania, was established in 1881, and the first MBA course were initiated around 1900. Though the US has been a hegemonic power, still it experiences some constraints in itself. As institutional architecture, division of power, pan nature of American society, the presence of only one organization in international system to moderate the exercise of American power, that is NATO. After the collapse of Soviet Union, India elected to liberalize its economy and integrate it with the global economy. Hence, the US also found India an attractive economic partner due to technological dimension and the role of Indian American diaspora. India needs an appropriate mix of foreign policy strategies to deal with the US. Either India should maintain aloofness from Washington and comprehend its military power, or to establish mutual convergence, or to lead a coalition in waiving the hegemony essay from its dominance. To deal with the hegemony, all the states bear the different strategies, either to extract benefits by operating within hegemonic system, or to stay away as far as possible from the dominant power, that is Russia, China, and European Union have opted this policy. Both the policies are known as bandwagon strategy, and to hide respectively. Alternative centers of power की बात करें, so after the Second World War, Europe shattered the assumptions and structures on which the European states had based their relations. To revive European economy, the US introduced Marshall Plan to establish organization for the European Economic Cooperation in 1948. Through UEL, Western European states began to cooperate on trade and economic issues. European Union established in 1992. It was a group of European capitalist countries with a common foreign and security policy, cooperation on justice and home affairs, and creation of single currency. It has its own flag, anthem, and founding state. उसके बाद नेक्स्ट जो है वो ये है, द यूरोपियन यूनियन हैज़ इकोनॉमिक, पॉलिटिकल, डिप्लोमेटिक एंड मिलिट्री इन्फ्लुएंस, एज द यूरोपियन यूनियन इज द वर्ल्ड्स बिगेस्ट इकोनॉमी विच गिव्स इट्स इन्फ्लुएंस ओवर इट्स क्लोजेस्ट नेबर्स एंड इन एशिया एंड अफ्रीका, एंड इट functions as an important bloc in international world economic organization as the World Trade Organization. In political and diplomatic influence, two members of European Union, Britain and France, hold permanent seat in the UN Security Council, as well as non-permanent members in UNSC, which enabled to influence the US policies, that is current position on Iran's nuclear program, use of diplomacy, economic investment, and in case of a dialogue with China, or human rights and environmental degradation. Militarily, the European Union's combined armed forces are the second largest in the world by spending, second after the US and Britain, and France also have nuclear arsenal, and it is the most important source of space and communications technology also. Though European Union bears common interests, still its member states have their own foreign relations and defense policies that are often at odds with each other. That is, Britain favored the US Iraq invasion, which other members of European Union, Germany and France, offered Americas. This policy, all these limit the ability of the European Union to act in matters of the foreign relations and defense. Before and during the Second World War, southeast region of Asia suffered economic political consequences of repeated colonialism, as well as at the end of the war it confronted with the problems of nation building, which gave birth to Association of Southeast Asian Nations, popularly known as ASEAN, for the uniform cooperation and integration. ASEAN was established in 1967 by five countries of this region: Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, Singapore, and Thailand, by signing the Bangkok Declaration. Over the years, Brunei and Darussalam and Vietnam and Lao PDR, Myanmar and Cambodia made its strength to 10. Some made its strength to 10, and some objectives of ASEAN is to accelerate economic growth, social progress, and cultural development, to promote the regional peace, and ASEAN countries celebrated the ASEAN Way, a form of informal interaction, non confrontation, and cooperation, standing on three pillars in 2003, that is, ASEAN Security Committee, ASEAN Economic Committee, and ASEAN Socio-Cultural Committee. The ASEAN Regional Forum, ARF, ASEAN Regional Forum, was established in 1994. The ASEAN has focused on creating a free trade area, that is FTA, for the investment. ASEAN Vision 2020 encouraged negotiation over the conflicts in the region by mediating the end of Cambodian conflict, East Myanmar crisis, and meets annually to discuss East Asian cooperation. In recent years, India has also tried to make agreement with ASEAN by signing free trade areas with the two ASEAN members, Singapore and Thailand, as well as signed on FTA with the ASEAN itself. Now, China emerged as the fastest growing economy since economic reforms of 1978 to be projected to overtake the US as the world's largest economy by 2040, with the economic strength of population, land mass, resources, regional location, and political influence. After independence of People's Republic of China in 1949, Soviet model of economy was adopted under the leadership of Mao by assuring employment, social welfare, education to all, and better health. As China began to use its own resources, grow Chinese economy at the rate of 5-6%, and China ended its political and economic isolation with the major policy decisions taken in 1970s. These included China-US relations establishment in 1972, four areas of modernization: agriculture, industry, science and technology, 1973, open door policy in 1978, privatization of agriculture and industries in 1982 and 1990, setting up of special economic zones. Regionally and globally, China is going to be recognized as an economic power due to contributory factors, that is integration and interdependency, have tempered its issue. ठीक है, so chapter 1 is completed. Now chapter number 2, contemporary centers of power. So European Union after World War II, Europe faced the challenge of rebuilding or reverting to old rivalries. The Cold War accelerated integration. Marshall Plan, US financial aid, मतलब financial help organization for the European Economic Cooperation in 1948, Council of Europe 1949 में, European Economic Community 1957 में, European Union 1992 में. The foundation was thus led for a common foreign and security policy, cooperation on justice and home affairs, and creation of a single currency. Marshall Plan की बात करें तो European integration after 1945 was aided by the Cold War. America extended massive financial help for reviving Europe's economy under what was called the Marshall Plan. European Union has started acting more as a nation state. फ्लैग, एंथम, फाउंडिंग डेट, करेंसी, बस कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन नहीं बना पाई. इन्फ्लुएंस ऑफ यूरोपियन यूनियन, पॉलिटिकल एंड डिप्लोमेटिक स्फीयर, इकोनॉमिक स्फीयर, मिलिट्री स्फीयर. इकोनॉमिक स्फीयर में यूरोपियन यूनियंस 2024 GDP projected at $19.35 trillion. by euro challenges US dollar dominance. Share of trade European Union is greater than the USA. इसका ये रोल था. And economic influence में extends to Asia and Africa. Significant role. Economic influence extends to Asia and Africa. इसमें significant role in international bodies like World Trade Organization. इसमें next है. Yes, I asked. France holds a permanent UN. ये पॉलिटिकल स्फीयर अब हम बात कर रहे हैं. पहले हमने बात किया था उसका क्या स्टेटस था एज अ इकोनॉमिक. नाउ पॉलिटिकल स्फीयर. फ्रांस होल्ड्स अ परमानेंट यूएन सिक्योरिटी काउंसिल सीट and several known permanent members European several known permanent members and European Union members influence US policies, prefers diplomacy, economic investments and negotiation over the military force, effective in dialogues with the China on human rights and the environmental degradation. Military sphere की बात करें तो यूरोपियन यूनियन हैज़ द वर्ल्ड सेकेंड लार्जेस्ट कंबाइंड आर्म्ड फोर्सेज, second only to the US in defense spending. And France as a European Union member has around 35 nuclear warheads. 335 nuclear warheads. European Union is the second largest sources of space and communications technology globally. Shortcomings of European Union as a supranational organization. Britain's Prime Minister Tony Blair supported the US in the Iraq invasion, while Germany and France opposed it. Many newer European Union members joined the US-led coalition of the willing. Euroscepticism exists in the parts of Europe against the European Union's integration. Margaret Thatcher kept the UK out of the European market. Denmark and Sweden resisted the Maastricht Treaty and the adoption of the यूरो. इधर क्या है, ये सर्कल ये दिखा रहा है यूनिटी को, ये एशियान का वो है. 10 स्टॉक्स ऑफ पैडी, 10 कंट्रीज बाउंड टुगेदर इन फ्रेंडशिप एंड सॉलिडारिटी. एशियन क्या है? एसोसिएशन ऑफ साउथ ईस्ट एशियन नेशंस established in 1967. 5 countries were involved: Indonesia, Malaysia, and the Philippines, Singapore, and Thailand. ASEAN was established by signing the Bangkok Declaration. Total strength of ASEAN currently is 10. ASEAN members are Thailand, Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos, PDR, Indonesia, Philippines, Malaysia, Burma, Myanmar, and Brunei, and Darussalam, Singapore. ऑब्जेक्टिव्स ऑफ एशियन. एशियन के क्या ऑब्जेक्टिव्स हैं? ओके, आप उसकी शूटिंग पे ध्यान दो. प्राइमरी जो है इसका क्या ऑब्जेक्टिव्स एशियन का? टू एक्सेलरेट इकोनॉमिक ग्रोथ एंड थ्रू दैट सोशल प्रोग्रेस एंड कल्चरल डेवलपमेंट. एंड हाउ इज़ योर मदर? सेकेंडरी की हम बात करें तो प्रमोट रीजनल पीस एंड स्टेबिलिटी बेस्ड ऑन द रूल ऑफ लॉ एंड द प्रिंसिपल्स ऑफ द यूनाइटेड नेशन. Principles of the United Nations character. Asian way, a form of interactions that is informal, non-confrontationists and cooperation. Now pillars of ASEAN. इसके ASEAN के pillars क्या हैं? ASEAN security community. It prevent territorial disputes from escalating. उसके बाद बाय 2003 एशियन अग्रीमेंट्स एंश्योर पीस, न्यूट्रलिटी, कोऑपरेशन, नॉन इंटरफेरेंस एंड रेस्पेक्ट फॉर द नेशनल डिफरेंसेस एंड सोवरन राइट. ओके. एशियन रीजनल फॉर्म ARF जो है एस्टेब्लिश्ड इन 1994, कोऑर्डिनेट्स सिक्योरिटी एंड फॉरेन पॉलिसी. एशियन इकोनॉमिक कम्युनिटी की बात करें तो इसका क्या ऑब्जेक्टिव्स है? क्रिएट अ कॉमन मार्केट एंड प्रोडक्शन based states to aid social and economic development in the region. To improve एशियन के हम पार्ट्स डिस्कस कर रहे हैं. सो एशियन जो है इकोनॉमिक कम्युनिटी की बात करें तो इसका ऑब्जेक्टिव क्या है? टू क्रिएट अ कॉमन मार्केट एंड प्रोडक्शन बेस विद इन द एशियन स्टेट्स, to aid social and economic development in the region, improve the existing Asian dispute settlement mechanisms, and create of free trade areas for the investments, labor and services. एशियान की बात करें तो इंडिया एशियान और इंडिया का रिलेशंस ड्यूरिंग द कोल्ड वॉर ईयर्स इंडियन फॉरेन पॉलिसी डिड नॉट पे एडिकेट अटेंशन टू द एशियन. However, recently India has signed trade agreements with Malaysia, Singapore and Thailand. इंडिया एशियन एफटीए केम इनटू इफेक्ट इन 2010. फिर चाइना की बात करें तो फास्टेस्ट ग्रोइंग इकोनॉमी प्रोजेक्टेड टू ओवरटेक द यूएस एज द वर्ल्ड्स लार्जेस्ट इकोनॉमी बाय 2040. पीपल्स रिपब्लिक ऑफ चाइना 1949 में इकोनॉमी इज इक्वल टू सोवियत मॉडल. और प्लस पॉइंट्स ऑफ चाइना स्ट्रॉन्ग इकोनॉमी पॉपुलेशन लैंड मास रिसोर्सेज रीजनल लोकेशन पॉलिटिकल इन्फ्लुएंस एम्प्लॉयमेंट and social welfare for all. Negative points of China: economic growth was 5 to 6%, population growth 2 to 3%, agricultural production insufficient to generate a surplus for the industry, industrial production was very slow. Minimum international trade per capita income was very less. टाइमलाइन ऑफ चाइनीज रिफॉर्म्स 1970s में मेजर पॉलिसी डिसीजंस 1972 में रिलेशंस विद द यूएस वर एस्टेब्लिश्ड 1973 में 4 मॉडर्नाइजेशंस 1978 में डेंग शियापिंग अनाउंस्ड ओपन डोर पॉलिसी. उसके बाद Chinese reforms past 1970s. No shock therapy. The privatization of agriculture in 1982 and privatization of agriculture in 1982 and privatization of industries in 1998 and trade barriers eliminated only in SEZ. उसके बाद न्यू पॉलिसीज प्राइवेटाइजेशन ऑफ एग्रीकल्चर एग्रीकल्चरल प्रोडक्शन रूरल इनकम्स हाई पर्सनल सेविंग्स growth of rural industry both industry and agriculture foster growth rate new trading laws and creation of SEZ and foreign trade and now the most important okay thank you all the best for your tomorrow's exam. इसमें क्या है ये फॉरेन ट्रेड नाउ द मोस्ट इम्पोर्टेंट डेस्टिनेशन फॉर द FDI इन द वर्ल्ड लार्ज फॉरेन एंड एक्सचेंज रिजर्व्स मेक्स बिग इन्वेस्टमेंट्स इन अदर कंट्रीज. 2001 में क्या होता चाइनीज एक्सेशन टू द वर्ल्ड ट्रेड ऑर्गेनाइजेशन. नाउ ड्रॉबैक्स ऑफ रिफॉर्म्स सो ड्रॉबैक्स ऑफ रिफॉर्म्स क्या होंगे एक्सट्रीम अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट around 100 million people looking for the jobs. Female working conditions was bad as the industrial age. In the industrial age, environmental degradation and corruption and economic disparities भी बहुत ज़्यादा था. India China relations की बात करें तो India and China were powerful nations in Asia before Western imperialism. The areas where India and China had influence rarely overlapped, leading to limited interaction. As a result, India and China were not very familiar with each other. In the 20th century, both nations faced challenges in formulating foreign policy towards each other. India-China relations की बात करें, so the slogan "हिंदी चीनी भाई भाई" symbolized this brief period of friendship. However, Chinese aggression on the Indian border disrupted these hopes. Tensions arose soon after, particularly from China's takeover of Tibet in 1950 and unresolved Sino-Indian border issues. And the two countries were involved in a border conflict in 1962, mainly over territorial claims in Arunachal Pradesh and Aksai Chin, Ladakh. The 1962 conflicts where India faced military setbacks had lasting effects on India-China relations. Relations began to improve gradually after 1976. In 1981, both countries initiated talks to resolve the border issues. Rajiv Gandhi's visit to China in December 1988 marked a turning point in improving bilateral relations. Both governments have sincerely taken steps to maintain peace and tranquility at the border and avoid conflict. Agreements have been signed for cultural exchange, scientific and technological cooperation and trade with the 4 border posts opened for the commerce. India-China trade has grown at a rate of 30% per year since 1999. Bilateral trade increased from $338 million in 1992 to over $84 billion in 2017. Both countries have agreed to cooperate in areas of potential conflict, such as bidding for every deals abroad. At the global level, India and China have adopted similar policies in international economic institutions like World Trade Organization. India's 1998 nuclear tests, justified by the perceived threat from China, did not hinder increased interaction. China was involved in the development of Pakistan's nuclear program, and its military ties with Bangladesh and Myanmar were seen as hostile to Indian interests. Indian and Chinese leaders are visiting more frequently, enhancing familiarity and fostering a positive relationships through the improved transportations, communications, and shared interests. However, recently relations have deteriorated due to factors like ongoing border disputes, the China Pakistan Economic Corridor, and China's support of Pakistan at the UN against India's anti terrorism initiatives. Japan as an alternative center of the powers. So, famous brands include Sony, Panasonic, Canon, Suzuki, etc. Limited Natural Resources and Imports and most raw materials joined the Organization for the Economic Cooperation and Development (OECD) in 1964. As of 2017, Japan is the third largest economy and the only Asian members of the G7, 11th most populous nation globally. Only nation to experience destruction from the nuclear bomb, second largest contributor to the UN's regular budget at nearly 10%, has a security alliance with the US since 1951. Article 9 of the Japanese Constitution renounces war and the use of force in the international disputes. Military expenditure is 1% of GDP, yet Japan ranks as the seventh largest military spend. उसके बाद है साउथ कोरिया एज एन अल्टरनेटिव सेंटर ऑफ द पावर. So the Korean peninsula was divided into South Korea, Republic of Korea, and North Korea, Democratic People's Republic of Korea, at the end of the World War II along the 38th parallel. The Korean War 1950 to 1953 and Cold War dynamics intensified rivalries between the two Koreas. Both Koreas became UN members on 17 September 1991. South Korea emerged as a significant power in Asia, experiencing rapid economic development from the 1960s to the 1980s, known as the Miracle on the Han River. South Korea joined the South Korea joined the OECD in 1996. In 1996, with the 11th largest economy and the 10th largest military expenditure in 2017. According to the 2016 Human Development Report, South Korea ranked 18th in HDI due to factors like successful land reforms, rural development, human resources development, and equitable economic growth. Additional contributing factors include export orientation, strong redistribution policies, public infrastructure development, and effective governance. South Korean brands like Samsung, LG, and Hyundai are well known in India. Numerous agreements between India and South Korea indicate growing commercial and cultural ties. So this chapter is completed. Now let's start the third chapter. So what is South Asia? इसको आप इस तरीके से याद कर सकते हो, MBBS पिन. यहाँ से जो है M से हो जाएगा मालदीव्स, B से हो जाएगा बांग्लादेश, B से हो जाएगा भूटान, S से हो जाएगा श्रीलंका, P से हो जाएगा पाकिस्तान, I से हो जाएगा इंडिया एंड N से हो जाएगा नेपाल. सो द हिमालयाज, नॉर्थ एंड इंडियन ओशन, अरेबियन सी, बे ऑफ बंगाल, साउथ वेस्ट ईस्ट प्रोवाइड नेचुरल insularity. This foster linguistic, social, and cultural uniqueness of the subcontinent. Afghanistan, Myanmar, part of the discussions. China may important note in the region. Political systems in South Asia. India, Sri Lanka, successful democracy since independence. Pakistan, Bangladesh, civilian and military rule. Nepal, monarchy till 2008, now a democratic republic. This chapter is contemporary South Asia. Southern part of the Asia, Pakistan, Nepal, Bhutan, India, Bangladesh, Maldives and Sri Lanka. India and Sri Lanka maintain democracy, Pakistan and Bangladesh military rule और democracy post Cold War. उसके बाद बेनाज़ीर भुट्टो, नवाज शरीफ डेमोक्रेसी, इसमें है 1999 आर्मी रूल सिंस 2008 डेमोक्रेसी हेड ऑफ द स्टेट. नेपाल 2006 कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल मोनार्की सिंस 2008 डेमोक्रेटिक रिपब्लिक. इसमें भूटान क्या है सिंस 2008 कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल मोनार्की मल्टी पार्टी डेमोक्रेसी मोर देन डिफरेंट पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज. मालदीव्स सल्तनत, इसमें है मुस्लिम मोनार्की 1968 में रिपब्लिक एंड प्रेसिडेंशियल फॉर्म. 2005 में क्या है मल्टी पार्टी सिस्टम. द मिलिट्री एंड डेमोक्रेसी इन पाकिस्तान फर्स्ट कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन 1956 में, मिलिट्री रूल 1958 में. जनरल अयूब खान एंड जनरल याहिया खान. बांग्लादेश क्राइसिस 1970 इलेक्शन हुए थे यहाँ पे. इसमें क्या हुए थे अवामी लीग वॉन ऑल द सीट्स ऑफ ईस्ट पाकिस्तान, मेजोरिटी इन पाकिस्तान असेंबली. ये इस तरफ है ईस्ट पाकिस्तान, इधर है ये वेस्ट पाकिस्तान. In 1975, Constitution changed presidential system only Awami League, democracy and autocracy. Nepal 2015, Sri Lanka Sinhala community, Tamil community, democratic political system, Sar Creek dispute and illegal migration. SARC 1985, South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation, SAFTA, South Asian Free Trade Agreement. Bhutan became a constitutional monarchy in 2008, now multi-party democracy. Maldives Sultanate till 1968, then republic, multi-party system introduced in 2005. Shared aspirations for the democracy across all the nations. Military and democracy in Pakistan. So in 1958, General Ayub Khan takes over, later elected resigns due to public dissatisfaction. 1969 में जनरल याहियो खान लीड्स forces Bangladesh crisis. East Pakistan becomes Bangladesh after the 1971 war with the India. 1971 to 1977 Zulfikar Ali Bhutto elected government removed by the General Zia ul Haq in 1977. 1988 में democracy restored under the Benazir Bhutto. Competition between the PPP and Muslim League follows. 1999 में army takes over. General Parvez Musharraf ousts Nawaz Sharif becomes president in 2001. 2008 में return to democratic rule, challenges to democracy now. Dominance of military and dominance of military, clergy and land owning aristocracy. India Pakistan conflict over empowering pro military groups. Military claims democracy is chaotic and flawed. Other factors इसमें क्या है pro democracy sentiments और free press and strong human rights movements. Western nations fearing terrorism and nuclear risks supported मिलिट्री रिजाइंस. इसमें क्या है इसको कैसे याद करोगे इस डायलॉग से. अरे यार जरा जल्दी बोलना प्लीज करके. अरे से हो जाएगा अयूब खान कमांडर इन चीफ एंड प्रेसिडेंट. यार से हो जाएगा याहिया खान कमांडर इन चीफ एंड प्रेसिडेंट. और जरा से हो जाएगा जुल्फिकर अली भुट्टो प्रेसिडेंट एंड प्राइम मिनिस्टर. जल्दी से हो जाएगा जिया उल हक चीफ ऑफ आर्मी स्टाफ एंड प्रेसिडेंट. और बॉल से हो जाएगा बेनाजीर भुट्टो पीएम, ये ट्वाइस 2 बार रही थी. एंड ना से हो जाएगा नवाज शरीफ पीएम थ्राइस. एंड प्लीज से हो जाएगा परवेज मुशर्रफ चीफ ऑफ द आर्मी स्टाफ एंड प्रेसिडेंट. ठीक है. 1947 to 1971 Bangladesh was East Pakistan, formed from the Bengal and Assam areas of British India, resented West Pakistan's dominance and Urdu imposition हुआ था. वहाँ पे उर्दू थोपी जा रही थी. So protests erupted against the cultural suppression and lack of political representation. 1970 के elections की बात करें तो अवामी लीग शेख मुजीब उर रहमान won all East Pakistan seats and majority in Pakistan's proposed assembly. West Pakistani leadership refused convene the assembly. Sheikh Mujib arrested. 1971 में लिबरेशन वॉर हुआ अंडर जनरल याहिया खान. पाकिस्तान आर्मी सप्रेस्ड. इधर जो नेक्स्ट है वो क्या है Bengali protests killing thousands, mass migration to India caused refugee crisis. India supported East Pakistan's independence military and financially. December 1971 में India-Pakistan war led to the Pakistan surrender in East Pakistan and the creation of the Bangladesh. Post independence की बात करें तो Constitution 1972 embraced secularism, democracy and socialism. 1975 में Sheikh Mujib shifted to a presidential system, abolished opposition and was assassinated in a military coup. Military role की बात करें तो Ziaur Rahman and BNP leader ruled till his assassination. Lieutenant General Arshid took over, allowed limited democracy but faced mass protests. Stepped down in 1990 due to the public uprisings. Since 1991, multi-party democracy established through the regular elections. Nepal was a Hindu kingdom and later a constitutional monarchy with the restricted democracy controlled by the kingdom and army. इधर 1990 में क्या हुआ, प्रो डेमोक्रेसी मूवमेंट लेड टू अ न्यू डेमोक्रेटिक कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन बट गवर्नमेंट रिमेन्ड अनस्टेबल. Maoist influence during the 1990s, Maoists expanded their presence, advocating armed struggle against the monarchy and allied, leading to violent conflicts. 2002 में क्या हुआ, the king dissolved parliament, ending limited democracy. 2006 में क्या हुआ, massive pro democracy protests led by the seven party alliance. Maoists and social activists forced the king to restore the dissolvent parliament. Transitions to republic की बात करें तो Maoists suspended armed struggle but demanded radical reforms in the constitution. 2008 में monarchy abolished, Nepal became a democratic republic. 2015 में Nepal adopted a new constitution. Sri Lanka's ethnic conflict में Sri Lanka has remained a democracy since independence in 1948 but faced ethnic challenges. Ethnic conflict में politics dominated by Sinhala nationalists marginalized Tamil minorities, many of Indian origin. Tamil grievances led to the militant nationalism culminating in the liberation Tigers of Tamil Eelam (LTTE) demanding a separate Tamil state, Tamil Eelam, by 1983. LTTE लिबरेशन टाइगर्स ऑफ तमिल एलम जो है कंट्रोल्ड पार्ट्स ऑफ द नॉर्थ ईस्टर्न श्रीलंका एंड इंगेज्ड इन एन आर्म्ड स्ट्रगल. इंडियाज इन्वॉल्वमेंट की बात करें तो इंडियन तमिल कम्युनिटीज pressured the government to intervene. 1987 में इंडिया signed an accord with the Sri Lanka and deployed the Indian peacekeeping force that is IPKF. The mission failed and Indian forces clashed with LTTE and were perceived as intruder by Sri Lankans. IPKF withdraws in 1989. Resolution of conflict. The civil war ended in 2009 with the defeat of the LTTE. Scandinavian mediators like Norway facilitated negotiation before the conflict's conclusion. Economic growth amid crisis. Despite the war, Sri Lanka achieved significant economic progress, high human development, and was a leader in the population control and economic liberalization. It continues to maintain a democratic political system. Kashmir disputes की बात करें, so the primary conflict between India and Pakistan dates back to the partition in 1947 with both nations claiming Kashmir. Wars in 1947 to 1948 and 1965 did not resolve the dispute. 1947 to 1948 war led to the division of Kashmir into the Pakistan occurred Kashmir and Indian province of Jammu and Kashmir separated by the line of control. ठीक है, LOC. Now next chapter is international organization. So international organization are institutions at work for the welfare of the countries around the world. They help and support different nations globally. They usually have a large number of member countries. Their work area is broad and international in scope. उसके बाद है importance इसका. They help in resolving disputes between the different countries. They work to establish and maintain the peace in the world. They play an important role in making global agreements and treaties. They play a key role in global economic, political, cultural, and social development, provide a common platform for the developed and developing countries to work together for a just and fair society, help in increasing cooperation and mutual understanding among the nations, creating a peaceful and harmonious environment. Why do we need that? Some global problems are so big that we single country can solve them. Some global problems are so big that no single country can solve them alone. In such situations, international organization become essential. they help uh, they help countries work together to find solutions to issues like climate change, pandemics, terrorism and poverty. इसका ऑब्जेक्टिव्स क्या होता है? पीसफुल रेजोल्यूशन ऑफ इंटरनेशनल कॉन्फ्लिक्ट्स, helping prevent wars, supporting global economic development, handling natural disasters and pandemic, promoting international cooperation, guiding nations towards the mutual collaborations, facilitating international treaties and agreements. League of Nations, United Nations. The First World War 1914 to 1918 made the world realize the urgent need for an international organization to resolve the conflicts peacefully. As a result, the League of Nations was established. In the beginning, the League of Nations was somewhat successful, but it failed to prevent the Second World War 1939 to 1945. This failure highlighted the need for a strong international organization that could uh, that could resolve the global conflicts and bring nations together on a common platform. As a result, the United Nations was established as the successor to the League of Nations. The United Nations was established immediately after the end of the Second World War in 1945. ठीक है, 24 अक्टूबर 1945 को क्या हुआ था? द ऑर्गेनाइजेशन ऑफिशियली केम इनटू एग्जिस्टेंस व्हेन टेस्ट की प्रिपरेशन हो गई है, देन यू कैन रेस्ट, अदरवाइज यू have to study. The organization officially came into existence when 51 countries signed the UN Charter, became a member on 30 October 1945. The United Nations aimed to achieve what the League of Nations had failed to do between the two world wars: maintain, then you need to do that, maintain global peace and cooperation. By 2011, the United Nations had 193 member countries, including almost all sovereign nations of the world. In the UN General Assembly, each member has one vote. The UN Security Council has 5 permanent members: United States, Russia, United Kingdom, France, and China. And these 5 countries were considered the most powerful nations in the world right for the Second World War. Establishment of the United Nations. The United Nations Charter was signed by 50 countries. Poland later signed. You will not fail. Establishment of the United Nations. The United Nations Charter was signed by 50 countries. Poland later signed as the 51st country, making it the fixed founding member. Thus, the United Nations began with 51 original founding members, and the most visible public face of UN is Secretary General. The current Secretary General of the UN is Antonio Guterres. He has previously served as the PM of Portugal and is the 9th Secretary General of the United Nations. Structure of UNO. यूनाइटेड नेशंस ऑर्गेनाइजेशन का स्ट्रक्चर क्या होता है? इसमें सिक्योरिटी काउंसिल होता है, सेक्रेटरीट होता है, जनरल असेंबली होती है, इंटरनेशनल कोर्ट ऑफ जस्टिस होता है, इकोनॉमिक एंड सोशल काउंसिल होता है, ट्रस्टीशिप काउंसिल होता है. फेल होने से कुछ नहीं होता. Security Council, total 15 members, 5 members are permanent and 10 members are non-permanent, replaced in every 2 years. 5 permanent members have veto power: United States, France, United Kingdom, China, Russia, ये सभी elected by the General Assembly. And objectives क्या होता है इसका? To maintain peace and security, to have the authority to maintain peace and security, to have the authority to issue binding decisions. International Court of Justice में क्या है? Headquarters located in the Hague, Netherlands. Until 1980, it was used very little, but since then developing countries have begun utilizing it more. It is used to resolve international disputes. The court consists of 15 judges elected for a term of 9 years. Judges are elected by an absolute majority in both the General Assembly and the Security Council. अब इसमें secretariat में क्या है? Prepares international staff for the functioning of the major organization, and the head of the secretariat is the Secretary General, currently Antonio Guterres from the Portugal, and the Secretary General is appointed by the General Assembly for the term of 5 years based on the recommendations of the Security Council. General Assembly 193 members. It is the only body where each member has one vote. All members are treated equally. An annual session is held. The General Assembly deliberated on all issues covered in the UN Charter. A two-third majority is required for the major decisions. Economic and Social Council में 54 members and member countries are elected by the General Assembly for a term of 3 years. All geographical regions are represented. Trusteeship Council, its purpose was to support the economic recovery of countries defeated during World War II. 11 countries were included in this body. It was discontinued after 1994. Reforms in the United Nations after the Cold War. In a changing environment, reforming and developing any organization to meet evolving needs is essential. In recent years, calls for the reforming the United Nations have grown louder. However, there is still no clear consensus of unified opinion on the nature and scope of these reforms. The United Nations faces two fundamental areas in need of reform: improving the structure and procedure of the organization, revisiting the issues that fall under the organization's jurisdiction. Almost all countries agree that both types of reforms are necessary. However, there is no consensus among the nations on what exactly needs to be fixed, how it should be done, and when it should be implemented. There is broad agreement that the structure, processes, and jurisdiction of the United Nations need reform. However, how to implement the reforms remains a complex issue in light of the growing demands for changing structure of the UN. On January 1, 1997, then the UN Secretary General Kofi Annan initiated an investigation into how reforms could be carried out. Possess significant economic power, have strong military capabilities, contribute substantially to the UN budget, be a large country in terms of the population, and respect democracy and human rights, represent the diversity of the world in terms of the geography, economy, and culture. India and UN reforms. India has supported the issue of restructuring the United Nations. India believes that in a changed world, it is essential to strengthen and solidify the United Nations. The United Nations should play a greater role in promoting cooperation among the nations and advancing development. India firmly believes that development should be a central focus on the UN's agenda. India has major concern regarding the structure of the Security Council. While the number of the Security Council members has remained static, the membership of the UN General Assembly has increased. India believes that this has under mixed the representatives India believed that this has undermined the representatives character of the Security Council. India argues that expanding the Security Council would make it more representative and earn its greater support from the international community. India believes that the number of both permanent and non-permanent members of the Security Council should be increased. International Monetary Fund, 190 members. This organization oversees the global financial system and provides financial and technical assistance upon the request. However, not all members' opinions carry equal weight. The G7 members, United States, Japan, Germany, France, United Kingdom, Italy, and Canada, hold 41.29% of the voting power. World Bank established 1944 में. The activities of this bank are primarily focused on developing countries. It supports human development, education, health, Agriculture and rural development, irrigation and rural services, environmental protection may reducing pollution, formulating and enforcing regulations. It supports basic infrastructures and roads, urban development, electricity and good governance. Anti-corruption measures development of legal institutions. It provides it provides its member countries with the concessional loans and grants. International Labour Organization, established in 1919, headquartered in Geneva, Switzerland, and this organization is a body of the United Nations to promote the decent condition of social justice for the workers and to work for the welfare of the laborers. World Trade Organization. This international organization sets the rules for the global trade, established in 1995, and this organization serves as the successor to the General Agreement on tariffs and trades GATT, which came into existence after the Second World War. Every decision of the World Trade Organization is made with the consensus of all its members. However, major economic powers like the United States, the European Union, and Japan have managed to shape the trade rules within the World Trade Organization in a way that serves their own interests. Developing countries often complain that the functioning of this organization lacks transparency or International Atomic Energy Agency, and this organization seeks to promote the peaceful use of nuclear energy and to prevent its use of the military purposes. Officials from this organization regularly inspect nuclear facilities around the world to ensure that civilian nuclear plants are not being used for military objectives. Amnesty International, this is a voluntary organization. It campaigns for the protection of human rights across the world, and the organization prepares and publishes reports related to the human rights. Human Rights Watch, voluntary organization, largest international human rights organizations. It advocates for the human rights and conducts related research. उसके बाद next है security in the contemporary world. So security means freedom from the danger. Human existence and life are always under threat. The moment we step out of our homes, danger begins to loom. If you think you are safe at home, that is a misconception. In such a scenario, we will not consider every danger as a threat. Instead, we will treat as a threat to security only those dangers that endanger the core values of the life. Core values, broad threats, serious threats, these are dangers which, if not addressed with the preventive measures, can lead to devastating consequences. सिक्योरिटी की बात करें तो ट्रेडिशनल कंसेप्ट होता है, एक नॉन ट्रेडिशनल कंसेप्ट होता है. ट्रेडिशनल कंसेप्ट में एक एक्सटर्नल सिक्योरिटी, एक इंटरनल सिक्योरिटी होती है. एक्सटर्नल सिक्योरिटी में, अंडर एक्सटर्नल सिक्योरिटी, military threats are considered the most dangerous, and the source of the threat is usually another country. In a military attack, not only soldiers are killed, civilians also lose their lives. A military attack on a country aims to break the morale of its government. In terms of external security, the threat often comes from a neighboring nation. We usually know from whom the threat is greater. In the event of war, a government has three options: to surrender, to accept the opponent's demand without engaging in war, and to defend itself in the case of war, that is to defeat the aggressor. Balance of power, that is BOP. ये क्या होता है? When a country looks at its neighboring region, it finds that some countries are small while others are large. This gives an indication of which country might pose a threat in the future. Example, a neighboring country may not openly declare that it is preparing for an attack. There might also be apparent reason for an attack. Still, by observing that a country is very powerful, one can assume that it might become an aggressor in the future. For this reason, every government remains sensitive. Every government remains sensitive about the maintaining a balance of power with the other nations. A government makes every possible effort to keep the balance of power in its own favor against the another country. Countries that are nearby, have strained relations, or have had conflicts in the past are especially targeted when it comes to tipping the balance of power in one's own favor. To maintain this balance of power, Every country tries to strengthen military capabilities. However, economic and technological strength is also is also crucial as it forms the foundation of military power. Measures for external security, strengthening military power, maintaining preparedness for the war, establishing a balance of power, adopting a policy of alliance, and internal security. In this context, it is believed that the threat arises from within the country's borders. Communal violence, separatism, nationalism, ethnic violence, and political instability. The traditional methods of security, reducing the use of violence. War should be just, war should be waged only for the valid reasons, self defense, or to protect others from the genocide. There should be limited use of weapons in the war, and warring arms must not kill non combatant enemies, unarmed individuals, or those who surrender. The military should be used only to the extent necessary for self defense and use force only when all other options have failed. Disarmament, arms control, and confidence building measures. Disarmament calls for all the state, regardless of their size, power, or influence, to refrain from the possessing certain types of weapons. Over 155 countries have signed the BWC Treaty. 193 countries have signed the CWC Treaty, and all major powers are among the signatures of these two treaties. However, superpowers like the United States and the Soviet Union did not want to give up the option of weapons of mass destruction, that is nuclear weapons. Both relied on arms control instead. ठीक है, नॉन ट्रेडिशनल कंसेप्ट ऑफ सिक्योरिटी ये क्या है? It includes broader threats. It includes broader threats that endanger the human existence. Examples हो जाएगा violence, bloodshed, famine, pandemics and disasters, global warming, terrorism and disease. And new sources of danger हो जाएगा AIDS, bird flu, population growth, refugee crisis, disasters, pollution and poverty, terrorism, etc. Immigrants क्या हो जाएगा इसमें? People who voluntarily leave their home country. And refugee क्या हो जाएगा इसमें? People who are forced to leave their country due to circumstances like war, disasters or political crisis. Internally displaced persons क्या है इसमें? IDPs, people who have been forced to leave their homes but remain within the borders of their own country. कोऑपरेटिव सिक्योरिटी क्या हो जाएगा इसमें? टुडे ह्यूमन लाइफ फेसेस वेरियस काइंड्स ऑफ थ्रेट्स एंड टू डील विद दीज थ्रेट्स म्यूचुअल कोऑपरेशन इज एसेंशियल. मिलिट्री एक्शन कैन नॉट सॉल्व एवरी प्रॉब्लम और थ्रेट इन एवरी situation. While military power may be necessary to combat terrorism and protect human rights, issues like poverty alleviation and metal resources, immigration, refugees, and pandemics cannot be resolved through the military means. In most cases, the use of military forces tends to worsen the situation. In such scenarios, it is more effective to develop a strategy through the international cooperation. And this cooperation cannot be bilateral, multilateral, regional, or global in the nature. Even in the cooperative security, the use of force can be considered a last resort, and the international community may authorize the use of force against the governments that are killing their own people. India's security strategies: strengthening its military capabilities, strengthening international institutions, addressing international issues, promoting social and economic development. उसके बाद जो नेक्स्ट चैप्टर है वो ये है एनवायरमेंट एंड नेचुरल रिसोर्सेज. एनवायरमेंट एंड नेचुरल रिसोर्सेज की अगर हम बात करें तो अर्लियर एनवायरमेंटल इश्यूज वर नॉट टेकन वेरी सीरियसली. हाउएवर, since the 1960s, the issues of the environment has gained momentum. Now, various countries are ready to engage in the discussions on the environment matters. Various problems in the environment are arable land is decreasing, fodder in the pastures running, fish stocks are declining, water pollution is increasing, water scarcity is worsening, and there is decline in the food production also. सो हम डिस्कस कर रहे थे कि अब वर्ल्ड में जो है बात होती है कि एनवायरनमेंट में जो है क्या इश्यूज चल रही हैं. सो अरेबल लैंड इज डिक्रीजिंग, फॉडर इन पास्चर्स रनिंग, एंड फिश स्टॉक्स आर डिक्लाइनिंग. रुको, रुको आई.